Alright, this is going to be the disassembly of a Browning A5. We're going to start by taking the barrels off. When you're taking this off, make sure to hold it down in case there's not a spring retainer in here. Some people take them out and don't put them back in, and then this will go flying. You're also holding the barrels down while you do this, otherwise it's going to follow itself up. And you can slide that off. That's what a spring retainer looks like. You're going to want to take this and get this off of spring tension as fast as possible. Easiest way I know of doing that is to take a punch or a screwdriver and just work your way around it. Just prying up a little at a time, like that. And you're going to get your spring retainer out. Set some things. The forearm slides off the barrel forward, sliding around that. A lot of Brownings have an issue with a cracked stock right there. This one has been repaired with fiberglass reinforcement. That's a pretty common problem, and the easiest way to fix it is just to cut some fiberglass and lay it in there to reinforce that crack. That's the barrel off and barrel assembly. Now we're going to go for the recoil rings. They just take a little bit of force to twist off. Main recoil spring comes off. This is if you want to set it up for magnum shells, you put that on there. I'll show you that on assembly. If you're replacing your brass bushings, you can get this spring off. Just working my way around, prying the steel spring off of the brass. Takes all the wear. These do wear out, so you'll want to replace them at some point. Make 2 rings. Alright, now we're going to take the stock off. I'll try and take the stocks off as early as I can. Put them to the side so they don't get scratched. On the Brownings, there's going to be a locking screw, which is going to get taken out first. Locking screw, and then the main screw there. Have a screwdriver set that has a bunch of different sizes in it. You want to match these screws as best possible and push down while loosening so that you don't mess up the screw heads. This one has been taken apart a lot, and the screw heads are pretty messed up. Also, the locking screws are specific to the screw holes that they came out of, so you'll want to put them back in the same holes, so make sure you match the stock screw with the locking screw that goes with it. Like that. Now the stock should come off. A little bit tight. There we go. Stock is off. I'm going to take the butt pad off. This has the invisible screw holes. I don't know if that's their actual term. But you can't see any screw holes. So what I do is I'll flex the butt pad to open up a crack, find out where they are, and then oil up that crack, and then you can slide a smooth screwdriver in. Don't slide one like this in that has the hexagon on it, because it'll mess up the butt pad. Slide a smooth screwdriver in, and you can remove the butt pad screws like that. The only reason you'd have to take the butt pad off on this gun is if you want to grind a new one, or put something like a recoil reducer in. If these screws start to get stripped out on you, make sure to replace them for the customer, because otherwise the next time they go in there, they're going to have a butt pad stuck. You're going to have to cut the butt pad off and drill out the old screws just to replace the butt pad for them. I just replace these screws as soon as I can feel them getting stripped out. If you need to get these screws out, just push them straight down on your bench and they'll pop out like that. Then you can pull them out of there. All right, now we're going to take the trigger group out. On the Browning A5 especially, you want to make sure you're not just taking screws out that you don't know what they do. You're going to have springs popping in there and then it's very difficult to get them out. So there's the follower. It goes on the spring like that. All right, so we're going to take the back set of screws out and this middle set of screws out. The back set, make sure to take the locking screw out first. And again, these are matched, keep them together. Take the locking screw out. And then the next screw, now this one should just hold in the trigger guard so there's no springs riding on it or anything like that. The trigger assembly, I should say. Set that there. Now we're going to take the next locking screw out. One more screw. This is just the front trigger guard screw. Right. Now our trigger housing is going to come out. So that's the trigger group out of the gun. We will come back to that and take it all the way apart. But for now, we're going to look inside the gun and see what comes out next. So the next thing to come out is going to be the elevator spring here. It is right in here. So pinched it together with my hands and slid it off of the peg that it was held in with. That ring was on this peg here, and it goes in like this. Put that aside. Now the elevator is off of spring tension, so we can go ahead and take out the elevator screws, which is going to be this locking screw and that screw, this locking screw and that screw. The elevator should come out. It's two pieces, so fit together something like that, and they just come apart. They're held together in normal operation with that screw there. Now we're going to take the spring tension off of the bolt. That is this wooden plug in the back of the gun here. There's a steel pin that goes through it. We're going to hold the plug in with one hand and push the pin out with the other. It shouldn't be a tight fit. Let it fall out, put it somewhere safe, and then slowly let the wooden plug out. Like that. And you can take the spring out. Take the spring out, take the wooden plug out of the spring. And then the follower comes out. There's a pin in the bolt right here, and there's a notch in the receiver right there. There's an opposing hole in the receiver right there, and we're going to go through this hole to push that pin out of the bolt. And we're going to make sure it's lined up right there. So I like to put it in place like that. Put one finger on this side, make sure that it stays in place, and flip it over, rest the punch in there, grab a hammer, and it'll just come out the other side. Now, this part is in your spring tension. There's a spring, it's captive on both sides. Came out of this hole here, and it was underneath this guy here. Something like that. So in order to get them to separate, to lift up the, I don't know what that's called, lift that up and the bolt handle will separate. Now we should be able to slide the bolt out the front of the receiver like that. Set that down, we'll take that further apart later. Now the bolt handle will just come out. And we're almost done with the receiver. The next thing on the receiver is the bolt drop button right there and the magazine block right there. We'll take those out next. Need to find a small enough screwdriver. You're gonna be tiny screws, and they are in the receiver here. Tiny screws in the bottom of the receiver. One there, and one there. I'm gonna need to find a tiny screwdriver. Alright, got my tiny screwdriver set. So these screws on a A5 that hasn't been serviced in a while might be really tight, and if you need to take them out, good penetrating oil for a few days will usually break the rust. Otherwise, I would recommend not taking them out because they end up breaking, and then these screws will end up breaking off, and it's not fun. You have to drill and tap them to take them out. So once they get out to about there, they're no longer threaded. Any no longer pliers will sometimes take them out. Otherwise, you can usually get them with some fingernails. That's what they look like. They're threaded at the top there, and then they're basically a threaded pin. And then your spring and lever will come out, and your button is just a button. Alright, now let's go to the other side. The first thing we're going to do is take off the spring. It's on the outside of the gun, right there. That's just a standard screwdriver. We don't have to use our tiny one. It's not going to go flying or anything. Just make sure you don't mess up the screw. Some solid down pressure is always good. The screws can come out and the spring comes out. Set that to the side. Now we need to take off the screw that is holding it in place. It's the exact same as the bolt release button. It's just a threaded pin basically. Slides out. It's gonna come out like this. This piece here comes out with that screw there. There is a spring underneath, so I put my thumb inside to hold it in place to make sure that spring doesn't fly across the room. Slide it out, and then just slowly release the part, and my spring was lucky enough to stay with the part like that. Sometimes they'll stay with the receiver, in which case you'll need to grab it out of there. Alright, that is a bare receiver. The magazine extension is threaded in, but usually they are very tight and have some form of thread locker on there, so we won't take that out. The rear extension here is welded in, so you can't take that off. Nothing on this should need to be replaced at any time. You can straighten these if they get bent. Should be good to go there. Set that aside. Now we're going to take the trigger group apart. The first thing I always do is release the hammer to make sure we don't have that spring. Helps if you take the safety off. I'm going to release the hammer. It's going to go all the way forward, and the main spring is going to slide off of it. You want to do that slowly, otherwise these main springs can overextend and break. Just like that. Alright, now I'm going to take the mainspring screw out. It's on the bottom of the trigger group. Goes through and holds the mainspring in. This is one that people a lot of times take off because it's right next to the stock bolt, so they'll take that off first, and and it makes taking the gun apart very, very difficult because the mainspring is floating around in there, jamming up things it shouldn't. Now with the mainspring, it's going to want to stay like that. You want to push it down to get out of the way. This guy here. So I'm going to have to get a little screwdriver in there. So there's a detent and a channel for that detent right there. You're going to push the detent down so that you can slide this part off of this pin here. So I just pushed down on this detent here and slid that off and then released that detent. Alright, now that that's off, we can take the hammer off. This one's going to need a punch. There's the hammer pin and the hammer. And now the mainspring needs to be moved to the top. That, so that we can get the trigger out. Again, that pin there takes the trigger out. There's our trigger pin. Our trigger should be free. Mine got jammed up on the mainspring. It is jammed up on the trigger, but you should be able to rotate it out like that. Put that down, the trigger should come out. Get the trigger return spring. There's a leaf spring in here. It's the trigger return spring. It's from there. The main spring is holding it down. You should be able to get a screwdriver under it. Pop it up. Pull it out. So we'll pop it up and pull it out. There's a groove. There's a notch right there on the spring that's going to slide into this groove right here. Alright, now the trigger comes out. There is a ball detent in here that you want to make sure you don't lose. It is right there. And so we'll tip that into my hand. It's a tiny little guy, so I'll put it somewhere where it's not going to roll away, which is going to be this cap. And the safety slides out. It did it on its own. The safety slides off the bottom. Alright, that's a disassembled trigger housing. Nothing else comes out. Now we just have the bolt left. The bolt is all held together with pins. They're pretty straightforward. We're going to take out the firing pins, the firing pin retaining pin, which is right there. Goes through to the back or through the other side. We're going to punch it from this side to the other side. Firing pin will come out the back. That. The locking block came out on its own. I'll show that right here. So it comes out the top of the bolt like that. Now this pin is staked in. We're not going to remove it. I wouldn't recommend removing it unless you need to replace either of these pieces, the locking block or this piece here. If you need to replace it, it's as easy as setting it on a steel bench block and pounding it out from this side to this side. You don't want to take it out every time because it's going to wear out that lock and it'll walk out in normal operation. Alright, now all we have left are the extractor and shell support. So the extractor is on the right side of this bolt, the shell support is on the left side of this bolt. They're both held in identically. There's a pin coming down from the top to the bottom, and there's a spring underneath the back end of either. So we're going to punch those out, and we should have a disassembled bolt. Grab an 1/8 inch, 16th inch pin punch. Leave the pin punch in until I can get my finger over the extractor. Pull the pin punch out, and the extractor will come out without shooting the spring across the room. The spring on the extractor side is in from the front, like that. Alright, same thing with the shell support. These are 16th inch pumps. The shell support, same thing. I leave the punch in until I can get my hand on it. Pull the shell support out, and the spring is hiding right underneath. My punches aren't long enough to take out that pin or that pin. I need to find my extended punches, and I can get those out. That's the disassembled bolt. Doesn't come apart any further than that. And let's see if there's anything else. So this piece here, it's got a pin coming through this side, and it's staked and ground on this side. I wouldn't recommend taking that out unless you need to. If you want to take it out, you'll line up. It's probably really hard to see, but there is a faint line on this side that you can go through and punch through there from this side down. It's going to be hard to get out. If you want to set it on a steel bench block, that's going to be your best bet. Otherwise, just don't take it out unless you need to. That should be a fully disassembled Browning Auto 5. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm Eric from McCluskey Arms Company. Thanks for watching.